understand yourselves in a way that someone like Bob Gibbs, with his expertise, who studies commercial districts, who understands business, and has been quite successful in helping other communities turn themselves around, only he really could provide. So I was just giddy and delighted when he said he would do the report and the study for us, and then I was floored when he said he would come tonight to give the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob to give the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing me here. My name is Bob Gibbs. I'm based in Birmingham, Oakland County, Michigan. And this gave me a good reason to come up here and try my fishing in the Manistee River. It's a little early this year, waiting for the next hatch to come out. We have been very honored to work with the DDA and the community to conduct a market analysis to see whether there is a market demand for new retail in the township or whether existing retailers can expand. And since the recession and since everybody's shopping on the internet, unfortunately very often we go to communities and say there isn't a demand, or you're lucky to have the retailers you have right now. That wasn't the case here. We found there's a strong employment base, there's a lot of tourism, as you know, there's a hub of retail commerce in the area, and you're just far enough from Traverse City and other big areas that a lot of people do a lot of their shopping and dining in this area. And our job is to estimate how much of that could be supportable in addition to what you have now. And to jump to the conclusion, we found that today there is very conservatively a market demand for 30,000 square feet of new restaurants and retail space. And I'll go through those in detail in a moment. But that translates to about $8 million a year in additional sales that could be captured by businesses within the DDA area. And that $8 million could be with new restaurants and new retailers opening up, or it could be with existing businesses expanding their operations and capturing more market share. The purpose of this kind of study is threefold. First of all, I want to congratulate you on doing this. This is a very big expense to do one of these studies, and it's really a forward visioning of a tool for you. The study has three purposes. One, it can help the township policymakers, the people who set your zoning codes and your planning. It can be used as a tool to see whether you should have more zoning or more commercial, or whether you should have less. Frequently now when we present these to townships, they go back and change the zoning from commercial to residential or industrial because they just see they don't have a demand for 10 or 20 years. It's also a really good tool for existing businesses. If you're an existing restaurant or you have a small shop or a sporting goods store like you have here, this can help you use it as a tool to target where you can get additional customers from and what kind of growth potential you have. And then thirdly, this is a tool for real estate owners. If you own a commercial building or a shopping center or a vacant piece of property and you'd like to expand, you can take our study and you can take it right to the shopping center industry or to retailers and use it as a leasing tool. About 3/4 of our clients are shopping center developers and retailers. And the study that you hired us to do is exactly the same kind of study we do for big national developers like the Taubman Company or Simon or the large companies. And they hire us when they want to open new centers. And they'll say, a shoe store may come to, or a hardware store may say, we want to open 5 stores in the Midwest in the next 2 years. Tell us what zip codes we should open these 5 stores in. And so we have to say, open in this zip code, open at this corner. If you open a store, your sales will be this many millions of dollars a year. And so we have to be very accurate. We are usually within 10% of our forecast of accuracy. Lately, we've been coming in under 5%. We just did a study in Dowagiac, Michigan, in the southwest corner, and the supervisor's daughter opened a bakery based on our study, which really made me nervous. She borrowed money and opened a bakery. So I said, you can support a bakery. So I borrowed money from my dad and I opened a bakery. Well, her sales were within 1% of our forecast 3 years out, which makes me feel really good. So you hired us for a hard data-based study that the large shopping center developers and retailers hire us for. You can use this for attracting new retailers. And I know I was told by the DDA, you just don't want to do a study and put it in a file. You really want to use the study. So there are conferences in Michigan and Chicago and Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Traverse City, Novi, Michigan. There are conferences where hundreds of retailers and restaurants go there hoping to meet shopping center developers and communities to see where they can open a store. Because if you're a store like the Tractor Supply Company, for example, that's a publicly traded company, and every year Wall Street has a conference call with them and they say you have to open 25 more stores next year, otherwise your stock price is going to dip. So the Tractor and Supply Company hires somebody that says, find 25 places in the country we can open a store. And they're very busy. So they go to these conferences and they look for communities like you. And if you have a market study, you can go up to their booth and you can say, look, our estimates are if you open a store, you'll generate so many millions of dollars in sales. And here's some sites we'd like you to talk to the owners. Here's the name of the owner of the shopping center. So you can be a conduit yourself. You can also go to the national or regional developer conferences. I was speaking at one on Friday in Petoskey. There was a small one. And all these developers were there looking for places in Northwest Michigan to go to. And the developers love Northwest, North Central Michigan because this is the only part of the state that had a population growth in the last 10 years. The rest of the state lost population. We were the only state in the country that lost population. And the only part of the state that didn't lose population was this area. You grew in population. So a lot of people that are in Kalamazoo, larger cities are getting squeezed out of those cities. And they're looking for places like this region to go to open. So this is a tool that you can use. I will, as a part of our service, we are available to really help for the next year. And we were asked to do that, and we're glad to do that. We will be available really at no charge for the next year for you to email me, call me, whatever you need, and we'll help you walk you through the process of how to use this. There's an online source where you pay them a fee online, and you type in your demographics and your location, and it'll tell you hundreds and hundreds of retailers and restaurants that want to open in your area. It's a great, and it gives you the name. This is one of their pages. It gives you the name, and it gives you the phone number and the person to call. And they don't know about Filer Township. They barely know about Michigan. They're always focused on California and New York and Texas. But you have very strong, very positive demographics, so we'll help you with this in the next year. This is one of the diagrams out of our report, and our report is a public report. It'll be available online, or I'm sure the DDA would give you a copy of it, but it's made to be very public. And of course, this is where Filer Township is located, and our market analysis estimates where people can come from to shop here. We don't just want to study who's already coming here. Our job is to find out where people could come from that are not coming here, and how can you capture sales. Our contract is for the Downtown Development Authority boundaries, but we expanded the study. It's really for the whole township. So it goes way beyond just the boundaries. This is a model showing a 30-minute drive time to Filer Township. This is Filer Township here, this is Ludington down here, and there are 36,000 people that can drive here within 30 minutes. That's a lot of people. I mean, that's a medium-sized city. So I know you're rural, and I know you consider yourself a small rural township, but you should think of yourself really as a community of at least 36,000 people that can drive here easily within 30 minutes, except when they're closing the highways like they were today. I had a very scenic tour coming here. Within 60 minutes, within an hour, there's 118,000 people that live within an hour drive here. And if you have a really great restaurant or you have a great shop, a lot of people will prefer to drive here because it's easier to park, easier to get here. They may feel it's more relaxed, people are more friendly. Your Myers, for example, probably has a draw of 45 to 60-minute drive. People probably ignore other Myers to come here because of their comfortable and ease to shop here. So consider yourself really a market of 36,000 to almost 120,000 people. Now within a 90-minute drive, you have 500,000 people. Now it's not likely that a lot of people are going to drive 90 minutes to come here, but it is plausible if you had a great cluster of specialty shops or you had something really interesting that you could consider yourself a market potential of 500,000 people. A few years ago, we worked in Walloon Village, which is a village of 216 people, maybe 220 people now. It's been growing. Very small population. And we put together a cluster of shops that I'll show you there. And people drive 90 minutes to go to those shops. We were able to create a drive time. So when you pitch this region to new businesses, consider yourself a fairly strong region. The average household income for people that live within a 5-minute drive is $63,000 per year. That's a very high average household income. It's much higher than the state. The state is about $45,000. So even though there are a lot of retirees here, there's a lot of modest income people that live in the area. On average, you have a high household income of $63,000 per year, and that's for people that live within what we define as the primary trade area. That's this orange line, and this is a 10-mile ring. And the primary trade area is where we think people will, about half of your customers will live that come here, on average. There are about 8,700 people living within the primary trade area, and we think those 8,700 people will account for about 50% of your potential sales. There are 71,000 people living within the total trade area. That's the green line. This is where we are right now. We're here. The green line is where we estimate to be your total trade area, and that's where we think about 75% of the people that shop live. So about 70, I ate at the Bungalow restaurant tonight, for example. We think probably about 75% of the people that would come there or go to your shops that you have here, your Dunhams or whatever, would live within that primary, the secondary area, and that's about a 20 to 25 mile ring. So when you pitch yourself, just don't say we're a population of this, because legally that's what your population is. And then 8,700 people in the primary trade area. And we estimate that there's about $10 million being spent by tourists that live here every year. You're next to a 1 million acre, the Huron-Manistee Forest, and you have the lovely beaches and sand dunes and all of that. So roughly the tourists are spending about $10 million. We do a lot of research for theme parks and a lot of tourist destinations. That's one of our specialties. And we have found now that when people go on vacation, they spend more time shopping and eating out than they do any other activity. We've been doing all the market research for the Boyne resorts up in Boyne and for their Big Sky resort in Montana. And to our surprise, when people go to Big Sky skiing or when they go to Boyne skiing, they actually spend more time shopping and eating out than they do at the activity. When people go to the beach, they actually spend more time shopping. And that's because they're there with their family, and it's become a fun thing to do, to shop and go to restaurants. But also they're so busy during the year that they don't have time to go shopping with their family. So if they go on vacation in July or August, they do their back to school shopping while they're on vacation. So your store, your Myers and your Dunhams and places like that will benefit a lot from the $10 million in tourist shopping. This is a chart out of our page that I won't be able to go into tonight, but it shows how many people and what the demographics are of the primary area, the secondary area, Michigan, and Northwest Michigan. For example, 20% of the residents living within 5 miles a year have a bachelor's degree. That's very high. That's higher than the state average. And 20% of people within the primary, the total trade area, have a bachelor's degree. There are a lot of people working within a 10-minute drive of here, and the workers spent last year $31.6 million on restaurants and shopping. The workers that are within a 10-minute drive of where we're standing last year spent $31 million on dining out and shopping. This will be a breakdown. This is a page out of our report where it talks about how much the workers spend per week. For example, they spend on average $40 a week in restaurants, $70 a week on general merchandise or home or clothing, $30 a week on groceries, and $20 on convenience items. They spend about $180 a week on average, the workers that are within your 10-minute drive. The people that live within the primary trade area are spending, last year they spent about $50 million on retail and dining out. Now, they spent 75% of that outside of Highland. You have a very huge amount of leakage. But the people that live within the 5-minute primary area, last year we know for a fact they spent about $50 million a year, and the opportunity is for you to get them to spend more of it here. The total retail spending, when you combine restaurants and retail, was about $68 million a year. And Filer only captured $17 million of that. About 75% of the spending of people that live in this immediate area is being spent outside of the area. It would be unrealistic to think that you can ever capture the 70 million. You'll never capture all of it. That includes internet spending too, that's being leaked out. But we think it's realistic to increase this from 17 million up to about 25 million. Conservatively, we think you can capture about 10% or so more of the sales than you're capturing. Nobody ever captures 100% of it unless you're on an island with no boats and no internet connection. That's the only. So there's about 75% leakage right now from the people that are living here. They're going to Traverse City, they're shopping online, they're going to Kalamazoo or Grand Rapids or Cadillac or wherever. So we think it's realistic that you can capture more than the 25% you're capturing right now. And our study varies per item, per category. But on average, we think you can capture somewhere between 3% and 8% more than you're capturing right now. There's a company that researches you and sells your data to us, people like us. This company researches your tax returns, not you personally, but people in your zip code. They research your internet shopping. They look at what sites you go to online. They research your credit cards, where you spend money. They research what kinds of magazines you read, what kinds of cars you drive, where you go on vacation, your education level. They really take all the data that you put online and they sell that data to people like me. And then we can take that data and translate that into new spending potential. One of the things they do is that they divide you into one of 20 categories. They categorize everybody as the one of 20 types of what they call lifestyles. About 30% of Filer households are classified as rural resort dwellers. And this is a page out of our report. So there's 2,100 people here that are classified as a rural resort dweller. And this describes them. Many of them are retired blue-collar or older households. They travel further to maintain they're passionate about their hobbies like fishing and hunting. They have simple taste. And the company that we use this for translates these 2,100 people into the kinds of stores they like to shop at. And that helps us figure out what's affordable. About 20% of Filer residents are classified as rooted rural people. And it says rooted rural people enjoy watching television, spending their time with their pets. When shopping, they like to buy American-made and generic products. They're heavily influenced by their faith, traditional gender roles, and their family history. Nearly 9 out of the 10 residents are non-Hispanic. They enjoy the outdoors, fishing, working in their gardens, etc., etc. So our report breaks you down based on the data they're capturing on you, and we translate that into sales. About 17% are classified as comfortable empty nesters. And these are baby boomers who are earned a comfortable living. They're benefiting from the years of prudent investing. Their net worth is well above average. They're enjoying retirement. They value health and financial well-being. They're 55 and older. They grew up in the suburbs, and they like living in a rural place when they retire. This group, this 17% group, has a very high income. Their income is almost $100,000 per year, even though they're retired. And they do like eating out at good restaurants, and they like to buy quality foods, and they like to take care of their health. And about 14% are classified as small town simplicity. Those are young families. Many of them are two-income families or single parents. They are stressed for money. They are very conscious about how much they spend on groceries and their children's clothing and sporting goods and things like that. And they very much are looking for a bargain when they shop. And then about 8% are classified as salt of the earth. And salt of the earth are into traditional rural lifestyles. They're older, the children have moved away. They also like the outdoors. They spend their free time fishing, boating, camping. They mostly have a high school degree or an associate's degree, and they love do-it-yourself projects. They like fixing things themselves. And then this is a chart out of our diagram. It shows what percentage. About half of the residents that live in a trade area are either the rural resort or the rooted rural. How many people here, I'm just curious, moved here from somewhere else? Did anybody move here from somewhere else? Okay. All right, good. Okay. Again, our retail demand today is for about 30,000 square feet of new businesses. That would translate to almost $8 million a year in additional sales that we think you can capture. When you look at by 2024, the next 5 years, that'll grow to about $8.1 million in additional capture. And that translates to $283 a square foot per year. Retail stores sales are based on per square foot per year. So when you open a store, if you make $200,000 in sales, that's nice. But the industry wants to know, what does that mean per square foot per year? Now we estimate in Filer that if you opened a new business, that you could generate about $283 a square foot per year. That's about 15% higher than the national average. The national average is about $240 a square foot per year. Now, if you're not in the commercial industry, this probably doesn't mean anything to you. But if you're a landlord, or if you're a shopping center developer or a store owner, this is very important because rents are about 6 to 8% of sales. So if you're a shopping center developer, you want your tenants to have high sales, because if they're earning $283 a square foot per year, then that means you could charge in this market about $20 to $22 a square foot per year for new construction, which is higher than you're getting right now. The rents here right now are in the $9 to $12 a square foot range, and I think that's in many cases because the sales are lower. But this without getting too technical, the potential for sales are high enough that you could justify buying a closed center like the closed Kmart Center and renovating it and fixing it to attract new businesses, or the sales are high enough potentially that you could justify new construction. Where if I had the right tenant, I could build a new shopping center and get a market rate of return on my investment. This is higher than we are normally finding in rural places. The average small Main Street retailer that we research only has sales of $85 a square foot per year. And so the potential here is, what's that, 3.5 times. There's a potential here for much higher than the average Main Street retailer. Probably the retailers in downtown Manistee are earning about $85 a square foot. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but a lot of them are non-market related. There is a market potential for higher sales. The average shopping mall in the United States has sales of about $265 a square foot per year, and we're forecasting that the potential, conservatively, the potential is to be higher than that in Filer. The average goal for a national chain, their goal is to have sales of $350 a square foot per year, which would be a reach here. But if you were a national chain like a Gap or something like that, or an Old Navy, your goal would be to have about $350 a square foot per year. And for a small store, that means $1,000 a day. If you're really humming, some of the stores on Main Street in Traverse City, the Talbots, for example, on Main Street, or the Orvis store, probably does about $1,000 a day in sales. Outlet malls do very well. On average, outlet malls do $2,400 a square foot per year, which is absurdly high. People love shopping outlets right now. The average Apple store does $5,000 a square foot per year. You know, they do very, very well. Apple stores are so high now that if you have one in your mall, Wall Street won't let you count their sales in your average because it throws off your sales so much. The Apple store in New York City does $66,000 a square foot per year, and that's in a basement with no windows. It's a totally different world in New York. I don't want to compare it. So we think you can support about 30,000 square feet of additional retail right now conservatively. It is plausible because of the highway traffic you've got and the worker spending and the tourism. It wouldn't surprise me if you could support 50 or 60,000 square feet, but I wanted to be conservative in what we're reporting to you. That translates to 8 to 15 new stores. There is a market today to support 8 to 15 new stores. You want to translate that into sizes. That includes a 1,200 square foot appliance and electronics store, and that could be a new small appliance store, or it could be an existing store adding an appliance department to their store or expanding their sales. There's a demand for about 1,100 square feet of clothing stores. That would be one clothing store. There's a demand for almost 5,000 square feet of department store merchandise. Department store merchandise are linens and beds and cosmetics, furnishings, things you would buy in a department store. Where is the closest Macy's department store here? Traverse City. Okay, so things you would buy in a store like that, and this would translate to about 5 to 6 new department store merchandise. There is a demand for a nice gift store, about a 900 square foot small gift store. And I was surprised there's a strong demand for more hardware goods here. And you are well serviced with hardware. Plus, Myers has a nice hardware department. But there's a lot of do-it-yourself people here. A lot of people like to fix things themselves. And the people in Filer spend more money on hardware than the national average. So if you're an existing hardware store or you have hardware, you could grow by this much. And I don't know whether you've ever been to Boyne, Michigan. Boyne, Michigan is the only city in the country that has 2 hardware stores right next to each other. It is so strange. And they're both thriving. I've interviewed both of them. They're both thriving, and they both, I don't know they believe this, but they both said they're doing well because the guy next door to them brings more people to Boyne. People will go an hour to go to Boyne because the first hardware store doesn't have it, the other guy will. So anyway, there's a demand for 2 to 4 little home stores that sell home goods, like dishes or art or lamps, things you would buy in your home. Tourists love to buy home goods when they go on vacation. They like to take something home and put it in their living room or their kitchen. It makes them feel like they're on vacation every time they look at it. You know, every time they turn on that lamp, they remember the time they went on vacation. There's a demand for about 2,000 square feet of miscellaneous types goods. These would be things you buy in a dollar store. Get a little bit of this, a little bit of that. This would be one good-sized store. There is no demand for a grocery store. This surprised me. But you're very well served. Well, it's a Family Fare. That's the grocery. Family Fare is an excellent store, and then you've got the bigger big box stores outside of town, and you've got some really great local markets. So this is unusual. Usually we always find a demand for 1 or 2 grocery stores. But we looked at it, and there is not really a demand. You are very well served with grocery stores and markets. There is demand overall, just for the retailers, not counting the restaurants, just the retailers for almost 24,000 square feet. That's a lot of retailers. That's that, what was it, 5 to 10 new retailers? Yeah, 5 to 10 new retailers that you could open today, conservatively. And on average, that being, I'm going to round it off to $280 a square foot per year, which is about 15% higher than the national average. So when you go and make a pitch to retailers, or someone calls the chamber and says, I'd like to open a store here, you can say, you know, our expert thinks you can generate this in sales. Restaurants. People that live in Filer are bigger eaters than average in the country. You guys have big appetites. Maybe it's because you do so many projects at home, I don't know, or you're all. But you're actually eating more than the average. And even though you're well served with good restaurants here, you have the Pizza Hut and the Bungalow, we went there tonight, and we get to, part of our job is we get to research all your restaurants. So that's the best part of my job, I get to eat out a lot. But believe it or not, there's a demand for another, that would probably be another 4 to 5 new restaurants potential here. And those could be new, or your existing restaurants could increase their sales. So you could absorb it with no new restaurants at all. But there's pretty good demand, and that's 3 to 5 new restaurants are supportable here. That really surprised me. We ran this model 4 ways. Because Andrew, my associate, was here, he said there's really great restaurants here. There's probably not going to be a demand for any. And we kept coming up with a very strong demand for more restaurants, and I think part of it is the tourism that you got, and you're just healthy eaters. So, and we met with a restaurant owner, we met with somebody here that owns a restaurant, and they said there isn't a demand for more restaurants. But statistically, it's overwhelmingly, and that's very conservative. The restaurants would include 1 brew pub, 1 more full-service restaurant, and 2 quick casual restaurants. That's where you walk up to the counter and you get a Chipotle, or you get something at the counter and you serve yourself or carry out. So that's 1, 2, that's 4, possibly 4 restaurants or so, or the existing restaurants could expand their sales. The restaurants that we know tell me that more restaurants increase sales for existing restaurants. And they will tell me that if you had 4 more restaurants here, that the sales would probably go up for your other restaurants, because more people would think of Filer as the place to go out to eat, and they may decide on the way here where they're going to go to eat. It's just like with food trucks. Believe it or not, putting food trucks in Traverse City, they have a little food truck corral. The restaurant owners really fought it, and they said, that's going to kill me. But they found that their highest day in the restaurants are the day the food trucks are there. Because the office workers come out and say, well, let's go to the food truck and get something different. And then they get there and there's a long line. Or they say, well, you go have your fish taco, I want a burger. So they go into the restaurant. So believe it or not, more restaurants help more. And you talked that maybe the DDA may have a food truck special event, which I would encourage you to do. This is a little chart out of our report where it breaks down how many square feet are supportable and what the average sales would be. So 4,500 square feet of general merchandise, 6,100 of restaurants, 1,200 square feet of appliances, 4,900 department store merchandise, no demand for additional groceries. That doesn't mean a new grocery couldn't come in. You may find a grocer will come in and they may say, I have the best meat, or I have the best produce, or I have the best fish, or I have a better price. Sometimes a grocer or a retailer will come in where there is no demand, and they will create a demand that didn't exist. And the retail demand for restaurants is about 6,100 square feet. And the demand for retailers is about 23,000 square feet. And this is a very strong demand for a community in this location at this size. The last one of these reports I gave last week, I had to tell the community that they could only support a gas station and a vending machine. And that was a very long hour meeting. I had to really be creative. There were a lot of sad faces. This is a chart right out of our report, and this will be a very good leasing tool for you if you're a real estate owner, if you're the DDA, if you want to make policies. But I'll just walk you through the lines. For example, if you opened in a clothing store, an apparel store, we estimate you can support 1,100 square feet. The sales would be $260 a square foot per year, or $296,000 a year in sales, growing to $275 in 5 years, growing to $302,000. So this tells, we actually estimate not only the square footage, but we estimate the actual sales of what the store will be. We are, I want to brag, we are the only market research company that does this publicly. So you'll be able to tell me in 2 years how close I was. You'll be able to say, you know, Bob, you said a home furnishing store could open 1,200 square feet. They do $330,000 a year in sales. If one of you open a store tomorrow and they do $330,000, I'll hear about it right away. Or that's your job. You should let me hear about it right away. But on average, we get within 10%. And we are very proud that we are considered one of the most accurate forecasters. Now, this assumes a lot. It assumes that that home furnishing store is going to be open when people want to shop. It's going to be assumed they're nice to their customers, and they act like they're, you know, they care about you, and that the prices are something you can afford. There's a lot of ifs there. But if they operate per the best practices, this is what they should do. So all in all, for retail, we think you can support 23,000 square feet of new retailers. The retailers will generate $267 a square foot per year, or $6 million of opening today, growing to $6.3 million in the next 5 years. And we ran, I think we ran 6 models for pilot. We ran 6 complete models. This was our second most conservative model. We actually have a model that was double for this, that I just thought would be too much of a reach. So this is a fairly conservative model. This is a page right out of our report, which will be available online. This is our restaurant chart. You probably can't read it, but it says a bar, a brewery, or a pub. It can support 1,500 square feet. It would do $495,000 its first year in sales. And that's $345 a square foot per year in 5 years. A full service restaurant, we think you can support a 1,900 square foot full service restaurant. That could be 2 small ones. And that would generate $532,000 a year in sales. These are the actual charts we get hired by restaurants to forecast where they should open, or that we do for national retailer chains. So we use the same methodology for Filer that we do for anybody else. We probably were a little more conservative with Filer. So all in all, about 6,000 square feet of new restaurants, generating $280 a square foot per year, or $1.7 million. That's existing demand today. That's pent-up demand, and that's assuming the restaurants, about 75% of you are eating outside of Filer. That's assuming that you can capture about 10% of that, which is pretty realistic. If you opened another good restaurant, or if the restaurant you have changed your menu, or had a sale or something, that's pretty conservative. This is our chart. This is right out of our report. I'm not going to go through it tonight. but it talks about the square footage, the sales per square foot, the sales per year for every category. We examined 52 categories for you. And out of the 52, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of the 52, there were 17 that are supportable here. So any questions? I'm going to talk a little bit about placemaking. Yes.
Well, on the restaurants, are you talking mainly about chains like Applebee's or something like that, or what are you really looking at? Something that's original and new in Manistee, or?
You could support either one. There are, you meet the site selection criteria for some of the national or regional stores, chains that we work with. But there's a lot of restaurants in the Traverse City area that would probably want to come here, that are regional, where they might have 3 restaurants in Traverse City. They might want to open a 4th, like a Jolly Pumpkin or something like that. But they could be local, regional, or national. And that's kind of a policy for you as to what would you want. Every city I work in almost says no national chains. They don't want them. That's a decision you may or may not, you may not want to make the decision. Yeah.
You mentioned in one of your other reports that the person bought the bakery. I didn't see anything like that on.
Yeah, we couldn't find a bakery. You know, your grocery stores are really, they have good bakeries here. Now, that's not to mean that if you're really clever and you had a great Cinnabon or you had a great donut, that you could take market share from Myers. And that's totally plausible. So this is what we think you could capture. But you could be a lot higher, yeah. And I think a good bakery could do really well here. But they'd have to be really good. And they'd have to offer. The bakeries you have in your brochures are really good here. Is there a local bakery? I didn't remember.
Open part-time.
Part-time. Okay. You know, the part-time thing is interesting. Last year, 78% of all retail sales occurred after 5 o'clock at night. 78%.
That's really good to know.
So, if you're a small retailer, it is impossible to have night hours because you can't afford the manager, you can't be away from your family. Only the nationals really can have night hours usually. But yeah, 78%. If you were a local store, and if you could have maybe be open till 6 or 7, you could see an uptick in sales. Anybody else? Yeah. Yes.
So is the strategy to show this information to possible chain operations or to individuals in the community? Or how do you go about marketing what you're going to do with this?
There's 3 things you should do with this. First of all, you should decide as a community or as your DDA board or your township, what are they, your board? Your policymakers should decide if you want to grow it all. A lot of times when I show a community how much they can grow, they say, oh my gosh, I don't want any growth here, and they change the zoning not to allow anything. I don't think that's the case here. I just showed a community that could support a 24-screen cinema, and they literally at the next council meeting put a motion prohibiting any cinemas larger than 2 screens. Because they said it'll ruin our city and our kids will turn into deviants if they go to movies or something, you know. So first of all, not to be flippant, but this is a policy tool for you. Do you want 30,000 square feet of retail? Do you want 60,000? If you call me next month and say, we really want 60,000, I could reopen my model, and it's a part of our contract. I could tell you what you'd have to do to support 60. So, you know, this is a policy for you to make a decision. Second of all, it's really for your local retailers. Every one of your local retailers should read this, and it'll help them target their customers a little better, and it might help them grow. And then thirdly, it's for your real estate developers and your shopping center developers. This is the exact tool that you will see, if you go to the last month was the leasing conference in Las Vegas. There's 50,000 retailers and 50,000 shopping centers. They all get together for 4 days and they have speed dating. They sit down for 5 minutes and say, here, I need 5 stores. And say, here, what a coincidence, I have 5 vacancies. You know, let's do a deal. So my reports are we're flying all over Las Vegas last week. People are calling me, are you really sure we can support this? So this is good for retailers, it's good for shopping center developers, real estate developers, and for you to make a policy decision. Do you want this at all? And you can take this right out. Your property owners could take this right out and do deals. We'll stand behind it if they do that, yes.
I have a question. So how are you, and this is just in general to try to understand it better, how are you connecting that potential retail with the changes in the population of the area? Because I feel like across the board of the reports I've read, one of the bigger deals for this region is the decline in the population. So how can we express this potential retail to the change in the demographics and the population for this area, for our area in general?
That's a great question. We forecasted out 5 years from now and to what your new population will be. We can only go out 5 years. So we're taking that into account. But we're also taking into account the underspending. Your workers are underspending. A lot of your workers are bringing in a brown bag to their lunch. And I think a lot of them would like to go out, but they don't want to go to the same 2 restaurants every day. So we're pretty confident for 5 years out.
You mentioned that outlet malls you do well by square footage. And,
Yeah.
you know, the township owns 20-acre plot of land, a Kmart lot. How would you go about attracting? You go to each individual outlet store, or are there developers that do outlet malls?
Yes. If you wanted to attract an outlet, you would go to a developer. And there's only 5 developers in the United States that do outlet malls. And I know all of them. I can send you, give people a call, and you would make a pitch. You'd say, here's our tourists, here's our demographics, this is available. And they probably would send somebody out to meet with you, meet with your chamber, and meet with your supervisor.
It seems like people who come to outlet malls spend money, also have lunch or
Yeah.
do other
They
things.
do. They really do. And the outlets are getting squeezed because they used to have a rule that you had to be 100 miles from the nearest department store. If you wanted to sell Columbia Outfitters, you had to be 100 miles from the nearest Columbia store. Well, they've been chipping that down, and now it's 0. You can open a Columbia Outfitter across the street from a Columbia store. So there's an outlet mall in Birch Run by, Birch Run by, that's by Flint or Saginaw. That got hurt. Birch Run was thriving. It got hurt a little bit when they opened the Great Lakes Crossing outlet mall in Auburn Hills. All those Detroit restaurants, my wife would go up every month practically. Now she goes to Great Lakes. So they're getting squeezed. But you might be a spot for an outlet. There was an outlet mall in Traverse City that got hurt a little bit.
It's no longer there.
Yeah, it's no longer there. They eventually closed it.
Now it's the new cinema.
Right. There's a new one that opened outside of Grand Rapids,
Right.
between Grand Rapids and
And
Kalamazoo.
that's a little higher
Yeah, it is.
designer
Right.
outlet, yeah.
Right, that wouldn't have been legal. Legally, they couldn't have done that 10 years ago.
Right.
I didn't see anything on bed nights or lodging.
No, we did not do a market study on hotels, but we did get from your tourist bureau and from a third party, we got this tourist spending. And it's about 10 million a year. The tourists are spending about 10 million a year on shopping and dining.
In Filer Township only? Because that's
Yes.
not the figure we
Well,
have for county.
no, not just, that's a good question. No, not just in the township. within that primary trade area, which includes Manistee. So within about 5 miles. Yes.
So Bob, you don't talk at all about traffic counts. And so one time we had someone come and talk about opening up big boxes and how they look at traffic counts, and
Yeah.
they just felt like we didn't have the traffic counts here.
Right.
So is that something that you consider, or is that an outdated way of looking at things?
No, we did look at traffic counts. We there's a little section in our report that talks about traffic counts. But that's that broker, I don't want to criticize that person that asked you that question, but that's a lazy question. Because you could have very few cars go by, but remember, you're really a trade area of 200,000 people.
Okay, great.
So he probably didn't want to pay a ton of money for a study. So he just looks at the traffic counts, which you get online for free. So this is beyond that. Your traffic counts are good enough.
Oh, good,
There's a lot of traffic on your roadways.
good.
Yes.
Does your model take into account like walkability, so like the infrastructure and like sidewalks within the DDA? Does your model take into account that?
Yes. Our model factored in walkability, and we had to give you a very low
Right.
market because of the lack of sidewalks and general lack of walkability here. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but if you could improve your walkability, you could more than double what we're forecasting.
So Bob, are you saying that you're going to talk about placemaking next, but our walkability directly translates into economic development and prosperity for the community?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, your lack of walkability is, what it means is you're competing with strip shopping centers. You're not creating a place that I can drive to and hang out for 45 minutes and walk around. I'm going here to go to the grocery store or to the restaurant, and then I've got to drive somewhere else. So places like Glen Arbor, Glen Arbor is off the charts because it's so walkable. So we did take into account your walkability, and I had to lower because of it.
With that, could the DDA benefit from like a public parking? Because I know within like certain communities, like your downtowns, if people can park and then develop their walkability, then they tend to stay in the area because.
Yes.
So does the model take into account that, or is that something that you just hope they generate later on?
The walkability score measures things you can walk to within a 5-minute walk, a quarter-mile walk, and how safe it is to walk.
So is it from like walk score?
It's a walk score, yeah.
Okay.
So your walk score, I think.
22?
Yeah, it's pretty
Okay.
low.
Yeah.
If you had a walk score of 80 or higher, yeah, and I am more than happy if you want to say, Bob, what if we did this? And I'm going to give you some suggestions. If we did this, what would it mean? And I can just reopen the model and give you an estimate.
Oh, that's really good.
So consider this a living document. Really, for the next year, I'm available to continue to help you with this. Okay.
Sir?
Yes.
What about like biking or bike paths?
Bike paths are really helpful for retail and restaurants. There is a study that says with bike paths, restaurant sales can go up 30%. Yeah. Bike paths are really good. In fact, we just published an article. Are you on our Urban Retail Institute? Just yesterday, I have an institute called the Urban Retail Institute, and we just published an article about it yesterday. Yeah. Yeah, bike paths, I didn't even believe it. Because, when you're riding a bike, how many, bags of groceries can you carry? But that's wrong. That's really significant. So the environmentalists in the 70s and 80s and 90s were trying to stop sprawl and preserve farmland. And they were trying to stop sprawl by making people live on big lots and fighting the zoning. And the environmentalists have concluded that that's not how you stop sprawl. You just can't zone it to stop it. You have to actually have people living in cities. And maybe you can help me with this. Can you help me with the clicker? My battery set must be dying.
Sure. Would you like me to forward it for you?
Yeah, I'll just give you a nod. Click it.
I'm totally in everybody's way.
Yep.
So the environmentalists have merged into a group now. They're called the New Urbanists, and I'm one of the founders of this group. Next slide. And we had a charter. Next slide. And we found that the way to stop sprawl is to have more people living and working in cities. That, you know, if you have 100 people living in a city instead of on 1-acre lots, that's the way of controlling sprawl. So we plan new places around the country that are really new faith communities. And this is an example of one that we worked on in Maryland, where we put in streets, small town lots. This is just like your historic neighborhood in Filer. It's a beautiful neighborhood. You have small lots, but this kind of planning is illegal in almost every part of the country. You know, they want large lots. And so the new developers, the younger generation of developers are building walkable town centers. Excellent. And this is what they did in the 1920s. This is a shopping center in Chicago called Lake Forest, north of Chicago. This was the opening day photo in 1917. And the developers would build these little walkable centers to sell houses. They could get more money for the subdivision if you could walk to the store. Next slide. So my group, the New Urban Group, we go around the country and we measure everybody's favorite neighborhood, and then we just recreate it. We just actually copy it. Next slide. So in the 1920s, that's what developers did. These are ads to sell subdivisions in the 1920s. So they would build a little village, and the village would help sell the lots. Next slide. And they were building neighborhoods based on this man's research for neighborhoods. His name was Clarence Stein, and he found that neighborhoods that had about 300 people living in them, and that were a certain size and that had a school in the middle, could be more successful for developers. Next slide. So that's what we do in the New Urbanism. We recreate new neighborhoods instead of subdivisions. And we feel the best way of preserving farmland is to have more people living in a compact, walkable environment. These are not for everybody. About a half of Americans really dislike this, and they want to live on an acre lot, which is great. But about half of Americans really want it, and there's just no really place for it to be built. So this is a neighborhood we planned in Macomb County for a city. Next slide. And it'll have 4 neighborhoods based around the little village center. Next slide. So this is the village center, and go back one. And this is the city hall. We copied Lake Forest exactly. This is an exact rip-off of Lake Forest. They built the city hall, they built the square, and they're building the city just like Lake Forest. Next slide. So this is one we did in Howell, where they have these little cottage homes, and the developers are finding that these are very popular with 55 and older people who are selling their 4-bedroom house or 3-bedroom house, and they want to live by other people. And they're very popular with the 20-year-olds, the millennials like this. And you have the real version of this in your historic district. Next slide. This is one we did in Howell, Michigan. Next slide. This is one we're doing right now in Troy, Michigan. Next slide. And they always have a nice park, a nice place to recreate. Next slide. And then we always like to put in a civic building. This is Harbor Springs, Michigan. And we always put in a school or a library or a post office, you know, something civic, so it's not just a subdivision. And back when Harbor Springs was built, the civic buildings were always put at the end of the street or at the top of the hill. You know, our governmental or civic buildings were given the best spot. If you've ever been to Sutton's Bay, for example, Sutton's Bay, the old fire station is red. It's right where the street bends. So you go either way in Sutton's Bay, you see that. And I saw there's some beautiful civic buildings in Manistee, some extraordinary, you must be a Carnegie Library. There's some extraordinary buildings here. These places become really loved by tourists. And tourists love to go and hang out in walkable places that they don't have at home. You know, they may be living in Farmington Hills or Grand Rapids and they live in a subdivision. And so these places become highly desirable and the retailers in these places do very well. It's not unusual for these retailers to do about $1,000 a square foot per year, and they do it all in 4 months because they're very walkable places. Next slide. The new developers are building subdivisions are building the corner store instead of the clubhouse. This is one we're working on in South Carolina. So we told the developer he was going to build a clubhouse with a swimming pool and a tennis court, and he was complaining about it, how much it was. And I said, let's not build a clubhouse. Let's build a corner store and sell milk and bread and beer and chips and use it as your sales office and bake bread and make coffee, because that makes people want to buy houses when they smell baking bread. So this is the sales office, and they also sell coffee. This is the new thing. The developers are building the little corner market now instead of clubhouses. It's walkable. You can walk and get a gallon of milk. Next slide. There was a recent study, it's called the Starbucks effect, where if you can walk to a coffee shop, your home values are worth 12% more. Now, if you can walk to a Whole Foods, they're worth 16% more. And you have little markets in your historic neighborhood. You have a market there. But if you can walk and get a loaf of bread, people will pay a lot more, especially the millennials. Next slide. So this is a neighborhood we did in Canton, Michigan. And these are homes, these were built for families. But we also did small cottage homes for empty nesters and millennials. This is completely illegal in almost all of Michigan because the lots are so small. These lots are only 40 feet wide, and the front yard's only 5 feet deep. But people like them. The young families in Michigan right now are struggling. A lot of them are two-income families. Last year, half of the babies born in the U.S. were born to a single mother. There are a lot of single parents, a lot of two-income families, and they are too busy to shop. And we think about 30% of the residents in the Filer area are struggling families that just don't have time for luxury shopping. We took that into account. Seniors are very stressed for money. Seniors are living longer than their parents, and they're all afraid they're going to run out of money before they die. So seniors have become very conservative. But you have a group of seniors, about 15% of your seniors are high income people that have their house paid off, they have a good investment, and they are looking for good places to eat out. Next. The millennials, the people in their 20 to 30 years are very interesting. They work very hard, but they don't like working in office cubicles. They like working with their hands. They like being a craftsman or a plumber or a carpenter or working in a manufacturing plant. They don't like to sit still. When they do work in an office, they do other work in a coffee shop. They will not work in the office. And the millennials are very cheap. Next slide. They spend all their money on experiences. They don't buy material things. Millennials will save up their money, go skiing or go to Colorado or go to Europe. They don't like to buy expensive things. They like experiences. This is an alley in Detroit. Millennials love hanging out in alleys. They love hanging out in edgy places. And they hate hanging out in shopping centers and malls. They grew up in malls. They were mall rats. They hate that. They want sort of an edgy, cool place. This turns off millennials. They don't want to live here. They don't want to shop here. They want to live in a place that's walkable, that's really cool and edgy. They do not like, about 80% of them do not like living in subdivisions. They want to live like in your historic, what's the name of your historic neighborhood?
So it's Oak Hill?
By the Township Hall, that area.
Oak Hill is not, yeah, okay.
Oak Hill is exactly the kind of place they want to live where there's sidewalks, where there's other people that they can hang out and talk to, and where they can walk and get a coffee or a loaf of bread. They shop at Walmart, but they don't like shopping in a shopping center. But they like to save the money at Walmart. Last year, 50% of American households went to Walmart every week. Every week. 50% of us. So, the millennials love living in cities, and surprisingly so do the 55 and older group. The empty nesters, many of them, about half of them, really like living where they can go downstairs and they can be around other people. It's the new cool thing to do. They don't want to live in a retirement community. And about half of the 55 and older, their biggest fear is when they move into a community, they're going to be the youngest person. They don't want to be around old people. They want to be around people that are younger, about half of them, yeah.
Would live work units work in files? So,
Yes.
you think that live work units would work in this area with the walkability score, where's that?
No, but the market will support live work units if you can build them in a walkable around a little square. The market will support them, but not in a shopping center suburban format. You'll have to build a little village or put them next to your neighborhood where there's something they can walk to. The millennials and the empty nesters, both, this has never happened before. The millennials are the largest population segment ever in American history. There's more millennials than any other group. The second largest are baby boomers. And those two groups, the baby boomers and the millennials, both like the same kind of place to hang out in, and they both want to live in the same kind of house. About half of them. They want to live, it's very interesting, and they like being next to each other. Now, in my generation, we didn't trust anybody over 30. We didn't want to be near them. And my parents didn't like anybody, my age. But that's not true. Both groups like hanging out in the same place. The millennials are a little weird though. They like to sit in, this is a town that we designed in Ohio called Easton. And we found the millennials refused to sit on benches that were bolted to the ground. You know how you put a bench and you bolt it to the ground? Millennials won't sit there. They want to sit where they can move the bench. They'll move the bench about 2 inches. And then they'll feel like it's their own. So in the new towns we're doing, we put in benches that are not bolted down. We chain them down so they don't get stolen, but we let them move around. And they like sitting there. This guy's pretending he's in his living room. He's actually in a town. In the new towns we're doing, we create lots of seating and lots of places next to places to eat. Very walkable. Next slide. So this is the new look of the shopping mall today. If what's it called, Cherryland Mall, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. If Cherryland Mall were built today, it would be built like this. It would be built with a street, with houses on top of shops. It would be built as a town. This is one in Atlanta where they always put in a square. This square gets so much use. This is a mall, actually. It gets so much use they have to re-sod it every month. The side literally wears out. Next slide. this turns off millennials the strip center look. This is a new town. A client of mine hired me to do a new town, and his architect made all the storefronts look like shopping centers. Okay, that turns them off. They like the handcraft, like in Manistee, you've got some beautiful handcrafted storefronts. They want it to feel different. They like this kind of look, the handcrafted look, because it makes them feel like the book they buy here they can't buy online at Amazon. It makes them feel like they're going to have an experience. They can hang out, they can read a newspaper, they can talk to their friends. It gives them, this kind of look gives them something they can't get online. And this is the only way retailers can compete with online shopping, is you have to give them that experience. And you can go back one. You can do little things like a handcrafted storefront, but look at the nice flowers. You know, the nice look. And this doesn't feel like a chain store. It's not a chain store. This is in Bethesda. It's like this makes millennials and empty nesters' heads explode. They love this kind of feel, and that's what Northern Michigan has. You know, this was a house that was converted to a shop. But it has a handcrafted, experiential feeling that you can't get online. This is the future of retail. And one of the things I'd like to see you do as a community is really embrace this and try to create a village destination where it feels different than a shopping center. Next slide. So this is the Glen Arbor. This is a little shop in Glen Arbor. This has the handcrafted, unique feel that your tourist would love to go to. Your tourists, you have it in downtown Manistee, but there's room for more. Next slide. This is one we're doing in Washington State on the Pacific Ocean, and there's very low income. The average household income is below poverty in this area, half of your income. So the developer couldn't afford an expensive store, so we had him buy mobile homes. This is a mobile home, a double wide, with a storefront bolted to the front. He couldn't afford to build a store. So this is literally a construction trailer, double wide, with a nice storefront. And you know, this doesn't look like a strip center. And it's in a very resort area. People drive an hour to go here and hang out. Next slide. This is the new look for shopping centers. Is to put housing on top, or offices on top, or workspace on top, and to have this handcrafted historic feel. Next slide. This kind of place, which looks expensive, but it's really not. It's just the front is simple materials with nice landscaping, nice flowers. Really can spike the sales. If you could have 5 or 10 of these in a little walkable village, then you can support 3 or 4 times what I'm showing you. Next slide. The suburbs. This is Troy, Michigan. The suburbs are dying. The commercial are dying, because they're unwalkable, and the millennials don't want to work in office towers where they have to drive to Chili's. Nothing against Chili's or TGI Fridays, but they want to go downstairs and they want to go to a walkable city. So these offices in Southfield and Farmington and Troy, the suburban office parks are dying, because the companies to get the MIT grad has to open downtown Detroit or downtown Grand Rapids. This is what millennials like to work in, this kind of social environment. And the think tanks like Google like this, because when this 30-year-old is talking to this 60-year-old, they're exchanging ideas and they're being creative and they're more productive. The really great ideas are being invented at coffee shops, not in a cubicle. So for business reasons, the employers want to hire, they want to have social places like this, and you could attract some pretty serious employers here because of your quality of life. if you could offer this worker environment. Next slide. This is a new town we worked on in Columbus, Ohio. This is all new, and we literally photographed and copied a city in Ohio. We literally just stole the designs. They weren't copyrighted, they were 100 years old. Literally just stole them, put in the streets, put in concrete sidewalks. We even put in parking meters. And, you know, this does really well. Next slide. This is a neighborhood we planned in Oakland County. These are little cottage homes around a little square. And this home was bought by a young family with 5 children. And this home was bought by an 82-year-old widower man. And it's really great for both. It's good for an elderly person to be around children once they get used to the noise. They live longer. This is the new thing, these little cottage homes. And I just saw these are in Traverse City. There's 9 new cottage homes that were just built. And they're tiny little homes, the roofs around the square. These are very popular with single mothers and with widows. Widows like living here because they're around their friends. This is a bungalow court. This is what just opened in Traverse City. This isn't Traverse City, but it's similar, where you have these little cottages grouped around a little square. This probably, I don't even know if this would be legal here or not, but this is the direction the housing guys like to go to. Next slide. And then these are townhomes. You're probably not a really strong townhome market here. I think you're too resort for that. Next slide. These are live-work townhomes. These are some that we're doing right now in Ann Arbor, outside of Ann Arbor in Pittsfield Township, where this is one house, 2 stories, on top of a shop. And the shop is owned by this person. And they can either work and have their own store, or they can rent it out and subsidize their rent. It's called a live-work. These are multifamily. I'm not sure you're a strong multifamily market, especially at this level, this price point. But this is where the 20-year-olds and the 60-year-olds both like living in the same apartment right now. Next slide. And then this is where they are putting, these are apartments on top of retail. These are very, very high density. This unit is 40 houses per acre is the density. 40 per acre. But this is an apartment, this is an apartment, and that's an apartment. There's 3 stories of apartments on top of restaurants and coffee shops. This is in Charlotte. This was designed for young professionals, and they're 25 to 35 years old. And they were surprised it's now full with people 60 to 70. And the 60 to 70-year-olds love living here because they can be around other people their age. If you're a widow or a widower and you want to have a date, you go to the Starbucks here and you can get a date in about 10 minutes. Guaranteed. Just so you can by 2025, 75% of American households will have no children. And we are still building 3- and 4-bedroom houses. In Oakland County, the Urban Institute estimated there will be a shortage of 20,000 apartments. It probably would be good for you to have MEDC or some. MEDC will do these studies for you for free. Or they might have already done for you to see what your demand is for apartments. You might be surprised. It might be higher than you think. Next slide. Again, these are 40 units per acre. And we use a kind of planning called the form-based code, which I know you're familiar with, where you look at the shape of the building, not the density. Next slide. We recommend you not build suburban garden style, too many suburban garden style apartments. These are where you're out in the cornfield and there's nothing to walk to. These are probably not going to be sustainable much longer. It's nice to build mixed-use places where you can have parks and squares and residential. That is the future of housing. The large single-family homes, these are preferred by about half of Americans today. want to live on a half-acre or larger lot, and they want 4 bedrooms. 2,200 square feet or more. This is ideal for about half of the buyers. Next slide. But by 2030, it's forecast that there's going to be a demand for 40 million more of those small cottage homes, like you have in your historic district. There's going to be a demand for 40 million more, a demand for 15 million more attached townhomes or apartments. And there's going to be an oversupply of 23 million large lot homes. That large suburban homes that they're building today, it's forecast there's going to be 23 million too many by 2030. Next slide. And it's forecast that by 2035, these homes will deflate by 35% in value. The millennials, half of the millennials do not want to live here. This is where they grew up. It's the last place they want to raise their family. They want to be in a walkable neighborhood. So if you own one of these, sell it before 2035. This is what both the younger and older generation likes, and this is what's lacking in Filer. And technically, this could be created, and you're working on that, I know, with your form-based code. So, about a third of the people strongly prefer these walkable areas, about a third strongly hate them, and about a third aren't too sure. They don't know whether they like it. Right now, the housing market is building for this. Only 1% of the houses being built today are being built this way, 1%. When they do get built, they become hyper expensive because of the supply-demand imbalance. Next slide. Walkability, we talked about walkability. Next slide. There's an app on your iPhone called the Walk Score, and it measures every geocode, every census tract in the U.S. It measures how many things you can walk to. And the score is 1 as low to 100 is perfect. And it measures things you can walk to. Next slide. The investors today only want to invest where there's a walk score of 80 or higher. That's the new cutoff. And the reason they like that is research has shown that when you build a house or an office or a store in a walk score of 80 or higher, it's worth 20% more value. And it's almost recession-proof. Your walk score here, I think, is in the 20s. This is the economics. Homes are worth 86% more when they're in a high walk score. So Wall Street uses this. My son works for a real estate investment trust on Wall Street, and his first job was to find every zip code that had a walk score of 80 or higher, because they said we're only going to invest in those zip codes. Next slide. Birmingham has a walk score of 92. Next slide. Keego Harbor, we're working right now, has a walk score of 65. Petoskey has a walk score of 100.
Really?
That's the only city I know in Michigan has a perfect walk score. Next slide. Go back one. If you decide to build a walkable place, I'm sorry, go forward one. If you decide to build a walkable place, I recommend you have the right scale for your region. A lot of people say, okay, I want a walkable place, so let's make a city. And they zone 5-story buildings with parking decks. Or they may zone a town. It seems to me like Filer that you're more of something between a village and a hamlet. You're not really a city. I mean, if you duplicated Muskegon here, look, Muskegon is a city. So everything that you design should be designed to reinforce what scale you are. You know, this building would look silly here. And this building would look silly here. Next slide. So a hamlet has very few shops and it's very rural. It's usually surrounded by the countryside. And the shops, almost all of them look like homes. Next slide. A village has more density, but this is Harbor Springs, but the buildings tend to be freestanding. They tend not to touch each other. A lot of them are very small scale, there were houses. The sidewalks tend to be kind of simple, and the buildings kind of zigzag, they kind of go in and out all over the place. It's a certain feel, a village, you know it when you see it. Next slide. A town, like Petoskey, has buildings that are 2 to 3 stories tall, and the buildings touch each other. Now, we just did a private project in Petoskey, and we were denied because we were proposing buildings this tall. And that building is illegal, Petoskey. Petoskey has the zoning for a village, but it's a city. So the Cutler building, you know, everybody's favorite buildings in Petoskey, we showed them are illegal because they're too tall. Their zoning hasn't caught up with what they are. Next slide. And then a city, of course, has much taller buildings. A lot of cities go to form-based codes, and they say all the buildings have to be up to the street. You have to have wide sidewalks. Well, that's more appropriate for a city, not so much for a village. Next slide. So for residential, this is the right scale for a village or a town, but it would be out of place in a city. Next slide. This is the right scale for a town. Buildings are 3 to 5 stories, but it would be out of place in a hamlet or a village. Next slide. This is the right scale for a city. This is Philadelphia. But your form-based code shouldn't encourage this. It would just be out of place. Your developers today are going to come to you and say, we need to build 5-story buildings. And you probably should push back and say, that's a little out of scale. Maybe that should be downtown Muskegon. And then suburbs have their own standards. You really can't make these walkable because there's really nothing to walk to. This is the suburban scale. In a suburb, you always have the garages facing the street, which makes it non-walkable. Because you have to walk by, people park their cars there, and it's unsafe to walk by. And then if you do walk by, you're just looking into garage doors. You're not looking into the living area of the house. This should not be allowed in your walkable area if you create one. Excellent. You're probably more of a village scale. And you may want to consider encouraging this kind of field, this kind of construction. We did this in Walloon, Michigan, where we just went and bought houses for $1 that were being torn down and moved them into the village to give us that instant historic look. This is a village town scale, just a nice little market. Tourist Lopies. Next slide. This is a village national chain. This is Talbot's. This is a national store. But their new model is to build the stores in historic houses. Because the millennials and the baby boomers love this feel. It doesn't feel like a national chain. Next slide. This is a city scale. This would be inappropriate probably here. And this is a suburban scale. This has its place, and you should have shopping centers in the township, but there should be an alternative place where you don't have this too. There should be some scale. This is a park that's a city scale. This would look odd in Violet. This is too much of a big city. And the civic buildings have different scales. This is in Bayview, Michigan by Petoskey. This is their civic building. It's a post office. And in a village, civic buildings tend to be painted white, and they tend to have kind of a relaxed feel, and they tend to be on a little hill. Here's the civic building in the Harbor Springs again. Next slide. But go back one. This traffic, by the way, is pretty close to your traffic on 31. The cars per day, if you look at it that way. Next slide. This is the civic building for a city. This would be totally inappropriate here. The Carnegie Library is very appropriate in Petoskey. I'm sorry, well, there's one in Petoskey too, in Tennessee. But it would be probably inappropriate here if you were to build a walkable village. It's too high style. Next slide. And this is civic art. We love civic art, but it should be at the right scale. This is civic art for a city. This would look really silly in a village. It's like, same here. This is great for a city, but it's inappropriate for a village. Next slide. This is civic art in Wasilla, Alaska. We're working in Alaska. This is their civic art. This is totally appropriate in Philo or in Petoskey, very rural little village. It's the right kind of character. And this might be okay for a village or a hamlet, maybe not for a city. But gosh, next slide. So everything is scaled. Next slide. Everything is scaled to whether your walkable place is a village, a town, a hamlet, or whatever. This is a perfect fence for a farm or a hamlet, but this would look inappropriate downtown Traverse City. This might look really great in Grosse Pointe, but it will look really weird in Traverse City. So everything, if you decide to build a walkable place, everything has to be scaled. Everything, the signs, the trash cans, everything to feel appropriate. Next slide. These are great for villages and hamlets, these benches. Next slide. This would be great for a city, but not really in a village. Signage. This is perfect signage for a suburban shopping center, but it would look inappropriate in the city, of course. And this is great signage for a village or a town, but it would look bad in a shopping center. This is the Walloon Village, where we had a client. Walloon is a little village of 200 people south of Petoskey, 7 miles south of Petoskey. There's about 200 people that live there year-round. And none of these buildings were there, except this. And we had a client that bought the whole village. The village had been burned down, had been torn down, and he wanted us to help him create a village. That was our job, was to recreate the village. Next slide. So, Walloon is up here by Petoskey, very, very rural. Next slide. We did a little plan showing what a village, village has buildings that are freestanding. The buildings zig and zag outside of the street. They have a certain scale. It was very important to him that this feel like it was always there. He didn't want it to feel like it was brand new. For personal reasons, but for business reasons. He felt the stores would do better if it felt authentic, like a real northern, like Glen Arbor or something. Next slide. So this is the way it looked when he bought it. It was really industrial, and it had a state highway going through. The cars are going an average of 48 miles an hour. Totally unwalkable, no sidewalks. Next slide. And we changed it to this. We put in sidewalks, street trees. We moved houses into the village to create that authentic look. And we had them paint everything white. We noticed in northern Michigan towns that historically they were all white with red and green roofs. And so we said no beige. Beige is illegal. You can't paint anything beige. We had a little problem with the township. We noticed that in Michigan towns, the stores were right up to the sidewalk, but they had a suburban code that required all the buildings to be 30 feet from the sidewalk. That's the one thing we couldn't get up to Bend now. I wish we could have. Next slide. So here's the street. We put in on-street parking, put in sidewalks, street trees are there now. And by putting these in, we slowed the traffic down to 28 miles an hour. Just because of the traffic calming effect. And then these are the little houses that we bought. We bought them and moved them there. Next slide. So here's the little plan. This was designed very much to feel like a village, not a town, not a city, but a village. Next slide. And then he built an inn. This is a 32-room inn. Again, we had them painted white. With the green roof, we wanted it to feel like it was an authentic northern Michigan place. It was interesting when they were painting this, the first building they painted white was brown. The painter actually called me and said, "Bob, are you sure you want this white?" He said, "It's awfully bright." He said, all my clients want me to paint everything beige. I said, "No, Charlie, just stick with me." And next slide. And then we built these little pop-up shops because it was such a small population. Its trade area was only about 1,000 people. And so these are 40 square feet each, and they're designed to look like Northern Michigan shops. And now we've clocked that people are driving an hour and a half to go shopping here, to hang out here for the Saturday. Next slide. So we designed them to feel like Northern Michigan. You know, we put in the little geraniums they have in the resort towns, used the white clapboard siding, and we scaled them to feel very authentic. And because of that, this little thing has worked out very well. Muskegon is doing a version of this right now, which has worked for them. Next slide. And then we put in a little park. This is an ice rink in the winter, and it works out really well. Just that little square. Next, here's the little park. This was a marina repair yard that's now a restaurant. This is one we're working on now. Next slide. This is one we did for Green Lake Township, for Interlochen. They wanted a little village in Green Lake Township. This was our proposal. This was the shopping center. And we proposed 2 neighborhoods for them. Next slide. And you know, the neighborhoods are scaled with little cottage lots and such. Next slide. This is one we did in Fulton County. Next slide. These are 26 houses on an acre and a half. Very dense, very walkable. And this is called an English close, where all the houses face the close and all the garages are in the back. This would not work if we had garages facing the close. Next slide. This is one we did in Rochester. This was a shopping mall my client bought and tore down because it was vacant. And we tried to put housing on top, but the city wouldn't let us. The city said, we don't want people that live in apartments there. They cause all our police calls. So we couldn't do it for residential here. I wish we could. Next slide. And tourists, we do a lot of work with tourists. Tourists love to shop. They love to hang out in specialty shops. There's at least $10 million a year your tourists are spending in this area. Next slide. The number one thing they do with their time is shop. Next slide. Foreign tourists, like Asians, especially love shopping, and they love going to real, authentic little places. Next slide. Millennials love going on vacation, and while they're on vacation, they like to hang out in coffee shops and places to go to. Next slide. This is a place we're working on in Canada right now, where we very much wanted it to feel like historic Canada. Next slide. So there is the look here. We know there's a market demand. Next slide. If you could have artistically designed shops, this is a coffee shop in Petoskey. In Petoskey, they have artists design the storefronts. These are coffee cups, which is really cool. Next slide. You could create a village. We encourage you not to do this, of course. Next slide. We encourage you to have handcrafted signs. Next slide. Have a sign code in your walkable area that's different than the sign code in the shopping centers. Shopping centers should have big signs, but in your walkable area, they should look handcrafted. And of course, lots of flowers. Next slide. Next slide. Art is huge right now. There's been a study that if you have murals and art, next slide, it really spikes up sales. This is Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where we're working right now. And in Sioux Falls, they have a little main street, and they have pedestals where they let sculptors display their art. And then they give a prize, like the prize in Grand Rapids every year. And their sales went up about 40% when they started this art on the sidewalk. Tourists love that. And I think there's a lot of tourists here that would like art if you could incorporate art here. Next slide. We just did a study in Mackinac Island, and believe it or not, they, as popular as Mackinac Island is, they have a huge potential for more retail, but a different kind of retail. They all sell the same fudge and the same t-shirt. Okay. They're missing there's a whole another tier of market they're missing. Next slide. We just repositioned Frankenmuth for the Zender family. We're doing a whole walkable, Frankenmuth is very walkable, but we're creating a whole walkable village for Frankenmuth. Agents, doing a study for Birmingham now. It's like we are repositioning the Boyne properties. We're working for the Boyne family. This is Big Sky, where we're actually creating a little village. You go skiing and then you'd have to wait in line 20 minutes for a hot chocolate. We're making that easier for you to spend your money. Carlson, we're doing a walkable. We've been working with them for 25 years. Next slide. Sale, next slide. We're working with Fargo, Alexandria. This is an interesting thing we did in Naples. Just putting these little signs that show where the shops are. Really nice little walkable technique. Next slide. Disney, we repositioned downtown Disney. And historical design standards are important. And I know you've been working on, you have a form-based code, you're working with a good planner right now, but there should be an area where you have stricter standards, where you want to be really walkable. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. These are the words. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This is what Troy's doing. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This was, go back. This was what we proposed for Petoskey. This was turned down because it was yeah, this was in the hole. I thought it would have been great. We were proposing a conference center with a hotel and a cinema. It would have been pretty nice. But this didn't meet their code. Their code didn't allow that tall of a building. Next slide. So you have a form-based code. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Slides. We're going forward.
Pull backwards.
I know, but I have to go forward.
All right.
2:30.
I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop right here. So
Okay.
our findings are we can support 30,000 square feet as you are right now for the next 5 years. If you could approach a walkable village or hamlet or whatever you want to set the dial at, then the potential is many times that. And we can run a model for you if you want. It is there. And there are 500,000 people within a 90-minute drive here that we think 10% of them would come here once a year. I think that's totally realistic, and I think you could attract maybe 20% of the tourists to come here if you could create that kind of place. It's technically possible. And the zoning codes, your form-based codes are there to do it, and you have the market potential to support it. Next slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you basing that on creating a whole new area or
Yeah.
village thing? So what about if you just made the existing areas more walkable?
You could do that. You could take your either your former Kmart center or your existing, what is the store that was People's? You could take one of your existing shopping centers and you could retrofit them into a walkable place. That might be better than building new, because then that would drive more people into their shops, and the people that go to those shops would also visit these restaurants. There is a it's not that hard to do technically. So this is your demand, 7.7 million potential now. Next slide. Growing to 8.1 in the next 5 years. Next slide. And 23,000 square feet of retailers. 6,100 of restaurants, 8 to 15 new shops. So you have a very strong area. You're losing 75% of the market share. We think that you can drop that down to only lose about 68%, 65 to 68%. I think that's conservative. Next slide. Next slide. So please look this up online. Next slide, next slide. Here's a book. I gave you a copy of my book. I
You
think
did, yeah, thank you.
We love working with you. As part of our contract, we are available for a year. Free consulting. Call me, email me. Any of you are welcome. This is my number. Pull in one more. Yeah. Here's my email address. If you're a business owner or if you're a resident, you are welcome for no charge. Email me for the next year. Send me a photo, ask me a question, tell me you think I'm full of it. I mean, whatever, you know, just let me know. I am offering the community free consulting for a year by internet. I travel almost every day of the year, and this helps me feel less lonely when I'm sitting in the airport. I really, really enjoy it. I really encourage you. Also, if you are a Facebook person, we have an institute, the Urban Retail Institute. We have a group in Facebook, and every day I post research. Like we just posted a research about brew pubs. Brew pubs increase home values by 15%. About bike paths. You will find lots of great research there for free. And it has been a very big honor to work with you. Thank you very much. It's been very, very great community to work with. And I'm glad you called me in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Is there any other questions for Bob? All right,
So-
well, you can email him. if
They're
you
going to
want.
be able to get. They're going to be able to get the study online, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
If you can't find it, send me an email. I'll send it to you.
Will that be on Filer?
Well, you know what, I'll put it on Filer Township's website. So you can, I'll put a link on there, and then you can, yeah. Yeah. And we encourage you to come to our DDA meetings. So thank you guys, everyone. Take some food before you go.
We got